farcical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL network.
Yes, so welcome on in, everybody, to the Saturday Night Network for the kickoff to our coverage of season 49. My name is John Schneider from the SNN. Hard to believe that we are finally back here off of one of the longest breaks in SNL history, and finally, at least one of the strikes has ended. Saturday Night Live is returning this weekend with host Pete Davidson and musical guest Ice Spice. And every single season, before the season starts, I get together with different panelists to talk about our thoughts about the season, just do some really fun catch up on where we are at in SNL's history, some themes maybe we could think about going into the season. And I love to get to do that every year. So very happy to be with you. And yeah, I see our friend Scott in the chat mentions that today is Saturday Night Live's 48th anniversary. So happy birthday, SNL, as we come here on October 11th, 2023. All right, let's bring in the panelists we have with us tonight. And first up is my numbers guy who will be with you all season long throughout season 48. And that would be Mike Murray. Mike, how are you?
John Schneider, we're back, man. We're back. Season 49. Thanks for having me. The SNL supercomputer has been warming up over the summer, and it's ready to go. I'm happy to talk SNL with you and Darren today.
Absolutely. And Wednesday nights will be Mike night on the podcast. So you'll get to hear from him throughout the season, where he's going to go through all the numbers with you. And I'll explain to you all about our coverage. If you're joining us for the first time this season, we'll go through it all with you in just a moment, but have to bring in our friend from SNL Nerds. It's always so much fun when we get to crossbreed the podcast throughout the season. So Darren Patterson joins us as well. Darren, how are you?
I'm doing well, Schneider. Thanks for having me on again. I think I was on the last preseason for last year, and here I am again. This is fantastic. Get new SNL, and happy SNL 48th for all those who celebrate.
Actually, for those who don't know, Darren was on the preseason podcast for season 46, our first ever episode that we ever did. So
day one.
That is, yeah, he's an
day
OG
one.
Here.
Day one.
So great to get to catch up with you, Darren. I'm excited to hear your thoughts as well. So let's talk about what's happening here on the podcast. I know a lot of you are big fans, and we so appreciate your support of us throughout the season, because really we love, just talking about every single episode, going through everything with a fine-tooth comb and just celebrating the show throughout the season. We're going to do that in multiple ways. So here is the coverage plan for season 49. So, as you know, we start off with our hot take show. Right after the episode ends, come on over to YouTube. You'll find us live with several panelists around 1:10 a.m. Eastern to break down the show. We're going to go through everything sketch by sketch. We get all the thoughts in the chat. Monday nights, we have our roundtables. So this is our first roundtable of the season. We did it on Wednesday, but we are going to head over to Monday nights for our roundtables throughout the entire season. That will be where we will deep dive into the sketches that we just really want to talk about more, that everyone's really excited to get into. We'll talk about the MVPs for the week and stuff like that. Wednesday night, we have Mike Murray joining us again, like I said, every Wednesday to talk through the screen time and the numbers. So when you get to that show, Mike will go through all the analytics from the week and explain to you who is really doing well on the show. So you get to hear that. And then Thursday nights used to be our patron feedback shows. That will be a monthly show now. That will take place after each cycle of SNL. Instead, on Thursday nights, we're going to have our countdown. We are up to the top 30. We're about to get into of the top 30 greatest cast members of all time. That will be every single Thursday night for you. So look for the patron feedback show on off weeks. We also have another special show for patrons we're going to do for the first time this season, and that is the SNL sketch breakdown, where we are going to go through one sketch just for patrons. It's exclusive to them. They get a vote on which sketch it is. I'll get together with another podcaster. We're going to stretch things out. We're going to go through every single line of the sketch, every single choice to put in a specific cast member, break it down. Was this the right choice? Was this the wrong choice? It is like film analysis. If you're looking at like a game and you want to know, how good did somebody really do? Was this written correctly? We're going to go through everything with a fine tooth comb for that sketch in our new exclusive Patreon podcast. You can always find our Patreon program at patreon.com/the SNL network. All right, guys, was that good? Did I explain it all?
That was Mike? Great. And by the way, we have a good milestone for our host, John Schneider, who recently just took part in his 250th taping of a Saturday Night Network podcast as either a host or a guest. So mazel tov, John. Great job.
Thank you. I didn't know you were
helming the
keeping
ship.
podcaster stats. That's exciting.
Oh, the stats never end, John.
Yeah,
They
for
never
sure.
end.
Well, we also recently had our 300th episode of the podcast itself, which is very fun and exciting to do. So looking
You did a
forward
good
to keep
average there then.
Yeah, keep going. Okay, so that's enough about the podcast for now. You're gonna enjoy the coverage as we continue to go through it. We have so many great guests that are so excited to get to talk about the season. So I'm looking forward to getting to hear from all of them all season long. But for now, let's talk about season 49. So last year, going into 48, as Darren would remember since he joined us prior, it was the talk of the town was, okay, is this the end of the old era and the start of the new era? And I do feel like we slowly inch towards new era in season 48, perhaps coinciding with, Cecily leaving the show. And maybe that was the transition point last year. But I really felt like season 48 felt so much different to the seasons that we had prior. And I feel like this is season 2 of the new era that we're getting into, to the point where the new people who we haven't seen enough of yet will begin to establish themselves. So that's my theme I'm thinking about as we're going to talk through season 49. So Darren, what about you? What are you thinking about overall once you hear and get excited about S49?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I agree with you, John. Like, I think a couple seasons back, like, people were kind of really wanting to see something new happen to the show, and I think it's slowly starting to happen. The first season, like after Cecily left, then all these new cast members came in. It started to have like a new, fresh feel. We got Sarah Sherman, who really kind of kicked it up a notch with the show, and JJ, and of course the PDD boys. I think with this upcoming season, I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see like the second half of like the new crew sort of really kind of beginning to take over. I mean, and that also maybe coincides with the fact that the 50th is coming up, like, right around the corner. So maybe there is a lot of old cast members. They're thinking, well, maybe this is time we wrap it up. Maybe this will be the last time we see Mikey Day. Maybe he's been on for a while, and people have been speculating he might leave, soon enough. Or, Jost and Che, of course, like, a lot of people say these people have been sticking around until the big 5-0, and then that's we're going to see, like, the big changes. So maybe like towards the end of the season, we'll start to see that. And, of course, the big question is, like, everybody thinks Lauren is going to leave after 5-0. So, well, that's another one that, I guess we'll maybe get more answers, like, as it gets closer to the 50th. But yeah, I think with this upcoming season, I think it's going to be more of the new, more of the young whippersnappers kind of stepping up and taking more of a lead role, I think I'd say.
Yeah, changing of the guard, perhaps. I mean, it would be very fascinating to see what all of the young cast members will get to do in this season. And, I've been thinking about this for a while, basically since we started the podcast coverage in 46, about, this 5-year plan as we started to head towards season 50, which would be that SNL, this is how my brain works, which is that, like, SNL wants their next great cast to be there at the time where they will get the most views on the show that they've probably gotten in decades, because there's going to be so much coverage, so much celebration with the 50th season of the show. I think they're going to pull out all the stops. So for me, all of these new cast members, the 4 that came in last year and the 1 that came in this year, I think are so integral to that actually materializing. Like, we have to sort of take off the kid gloves when evaluating them this season, because last year they were rookies and we just wanted to see what they could do. Now they're going to be put in positions to be like, okay, are you going to be a great cast member on the show or not? And I think that's really exciting to get to do for the first time in a while. So Mike, let me ask you, what are you thinking about when you hear season 49 is coming around?
Well, you guys just touched upon it, that season 50 is this exciting celebration of the show, but it's also this kind of looming cloud ahead that you want to be in a really good spot for that, because, like you said, John, so many eyes on the show, and just assessing the show now, but looking back on it and what it's meant to television and to the country and to comedy and everything. So you don't want to be embarrassed by the show. I don't think they will be, but you definitely don't want to be people that say SNL hasn't been funny since X amount of years. You want SNL to be funny today when the 50 comes. So with 49 here, I think it's like maybe the last chance to try to mix things up and try to see what you have. Some diverse comedy and diverse cast and things like that. So I really am excited for this season, and I have high expectations because I want them to have a hot start. I feel like in the fall, sometimes they take a little time to get going. And let's face it, they were interrupted during a great run. I feel like the last 3 shows they had were great. And I looked at the stats today to get a refresher. And Molly, Michael Longfellow, and even Dismukes had statistically best episodes of their career in those last 3 episodes. So I think people like them who are going forward and now not rookies anymore, and Dismukes coming in second year as a repertory player, things like that. I think I want them to just start hot and with a lot of energy and not have a kind of figuring out period, because before you know it, it's going to be mid-season. It's going to be a Christmas episode. And then 50 is like around the corner. So that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I love that you said that, because you have all of these young performers who are really starting to take a step up, and season 49 presents us an opportunity to properly evaluate them, especially with these first 2 episodes coming up in the Pete Davidson and Ice Spice episode, because I don't think that Pete Davidson's going to take over the show. I think there's going to be some Pete-centric sketches, but I don't think he's the type of host that it's going to be all about him, and we're not going to get some cast-focused sketches. And I naturally don't think Bad Bunny would do that either. I actually think the longer that the SAG strike goes on, which I know that they're still negotiating today, so my feeling is that if, SNL hosts right now, like we have Pete, who's not talking about Bupkis, like in the press release that we got, basically the promo for him was he's doing a stand-up tour around the US and Canada. And then for Bad Bunny, they promoted his album naturally. But we're not getting hosts that are promoting this new movie or hosts that are promoting this TV show because the SAG strike is still going on. So I wonder if the type of hosts we may get at the start of the season until that's all resolved, that these episodes may feel actually very cast focused, which would give us that opportunity to evaluate them. And I think that's a really big positive, knowing what's to come. What do you think of that, Darren?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think I remember some people online on the Twitters talking about how when the show comes back, because SAG is still on strike, like some people were throwing out the idea of, oh, maybe they should do a no host show like they did back in the day, where it's like literally just a show with just the cast and they get to shine. And I think with Pete hosting, you're sort of getting that, because I mean, like you said, like Pete has never like kind of really, like when during his time on the show, he never really like kind of dominated a sketch. I don't think so. I mean, he had his characters, like Chad and whatnot, but he never really was like kind of that big kind of force of nature in sketches, like the way maybe Kate was or something like that. I actually think it makes more sense for him to be the host now than it was when he was supposed to host back in May, because I think now that the show's coming back, and after this big long hiatus, after this big whole strike thing, it would be good to sort of have a host that can sort of welcome the audience back, and like it also the host be somebody who's like a familiar face to the audience, to be like, oh hey, it's Pete, I know Pete, that type of thing. And I think I'm really looking forward to his monologue too, because like I think he'll have a cool take on exactly what's been going on for the past few months and the strikes. Part of me is kind of hoping he'll maybe take a few jabs at how he was barely around his last year. But like, I think he'll have a good take on the whole strike thing. He's always I always thought he was best when he was just kind of talking to the audience, like his stand-up. Like I always thought his Weekend Update segments were always like the strongest, where it was just him riffing and being honest and being funny at the same time. So, yeah, what was the question? I don't even know if I answered it. I just rambled.
Well, no, you're doing a great job answering, because I think that, like, my feeling is that if they had another alumni come in that was, Pete Davidson's a huge name, but another alumni that was a much stronger cast member, I would feel like I would actually be more concerned about the quality of the premiere, because I feel like Pete could fit more into the ensemble that we may be getting on Saturday. Whereas if you had a really, really great cast member, one of the all-time greats, come in to host the premiere, I think that the show would just be so about them like the entire time that we wouldn't necessarily have like a time for a Marcelo piece or like a Longfellow piece in the way that we may get this weekend because of that. So that's actually a real big positive for me. And I'll admit, like, if we watch on Saturday and I'm wrong and like every sketch is Chad or a Pete sketch, then like I would say that's a poor job on them, because though we need to focus on the host, it shouldn't be the entire focus of the premiere. So I'll say with that caveat that we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm optimistic that this is the right thing for the show for these 2 episodes, Pete and Bad Bunny, that the cast will get to shine that way. So Mike, what are your thoughts?
I think Pete's a great choice. I agree with Darren that it seems a little more appropriate now as a premiere episode than promoting a show at the end when he was in the cast the previous season. And as you mentioned, wasn't around a lot. It seemed a little premature. I looked it up. He's the fourth smallest window from cast to host. Actually tied with Bill Hader of 511 days from last episode to time hosting, and 38th person to be both a host and a cast member. And second youngest returning cast member, 63 days younger than Chris Rock was when he hosted. I think it's to be great, like we mentioned, celebrating SNL. As much as Pete's relationship with the show was different at times, with him kind of disappearing. I think it was in season 45, like a couple episodes at the beginning, and then at the end of 47 with the Kim Kardashian stuff, he was gone a lot. But I think he really loves the show and adores Lorne and just respects the institution a lot. I think he'll have a great monologue, like Darren said. He'll definitely be on Update. And yeah, I think it's a great choice, like you said, John, to maybe highlight the cast. But I think it's going to be easier show for the cast that knows Pete, and it will be comfortable and it'll be fun.
Yeah, and I think the most fascinating thing, like while we're talking about stats, is one of the stats that we've been using on the countdown is the sketch per episode average. And for Pete's entire career at SNL, he averaged 2.61 sketches per episode during his time as a cast member. So that's 2.5 sketches an episode. You would naturally think like the average host is in like 9 things in an episode. So that's 3 times the workload that Pete was used to during his time as a cast member. And I just think like how he'll do with that would be really, really interesting to take a look at this weekend and how it affects everybody else. But beyond Pete and what we're going to see, I do think like another big theme for me that I'm thinking about coming into the season, and I think I saw it was our friend Gelp in the chat. Yeah, Gelp, who said the election is coming up. And, like that's something that we got to cover when we first started the podcast in 46. And 46, with bringing in Jim Carrey and continuing what was happening with Baldwin and Trump, like that was sort of the end of a few years in a row of what I ultimately believe is like one of SNL's like weirdest time covering politics. Like we've seen like all types of incredible, great sketches throughout the decades. And I think season 42 definitely had some of that, but like they leaned into a direction that like the topic on every podcast was like, let's get away from bringing in cameos from outside. Let's focus on what we have with the cast now. And I just love that we sort of have a clean slate going into this potential election season where we don't know who is going to play which political figure, that they have an opportunity to have writers who have never written such high stakes political sketches before be given that opportunity. Like there's like Jim Downey's not coming in the building to write any of these sketches. Like it will be absolutely fascinating to see like who takes over the political discourse at Saturday Night Live as we get closer to election season. Darren, what are your thoughts? Like, what are you thinking about when it comes to this upcoming election?
Well, I mean, when it comes to this upcoming election, I mean, for one, JAJ is going to be working overtime. And for two, I really hope that they kind of don't fall into the same traps that they did last season. Like you mentioned, like that last season was just bananas, just because it was just, stunt casting after stunt casting. Like they brought in Jim Carrey, then they brought in Matt Damon, and then they brought in, you could say it all started once with the Tina Fey as Sarah Palin, and then that took off the way it did. And then they were like, oh, maybe we should do more stunt casting. And then we got Larry David as Bernie Sanders, and then Maya came in as Kamala Harris. And then it was just like celeb after celeb. We got De Niro as Robert Mueller and Ben Stiller, and it just seemed like, it's like SNL has a cast, like like we've heard on this podcast, where it just seemed like the actual cast members were just sitting on the sidelines while the popular kids were kind of doing their job. And like, I just hope they don't fall into that same trap and just use their cast. And of course, the other trap that I really wasn't wild about is those long cold opens. It's like they were all political and they were all like 10 minutes or 12, 15 minutes. Like, I won't say they weren't 15 minutes, but they were long. And like, that was a thing where it's just like really just kind of turning me off. Like, so I just hope, with the next season, they keep with the shorter cold opens, which they've been doing. Like, the cold opens have been getting shorter. They kind of wrangle that in. I hope they continue that in the election year, and then just keep on using the cast and don't lean so much on stunt casting.
Yeah, I think some of the most fun that I've actually had with some of the political sketches is like this time of the ramp up to the general presidential election, which is the like you have so many different candidates and all of them have weird quirks, and it's like, how do we fit like a square peg in a round hole? Like, how do we find a cast member who like kind of looks like them, and like we try and make it work? Because I think I saw I saw John in the chat mention that like he's really looking forward to seeing what SNL does with politics besides JHA, which is like, yeah, this is JHA's like time. Like, he's ready to go. He's in the locker room. He's putting on the eye paint. Like, he's ready to go for this. But like, we know that he's going to kill it. We don't know what the other cast members are going to do with politics this upcoming season. And I think that's really cool. So Mike, how are you feeling about it?
Anxiety, probably. No, just, I mean, it's only because the election in this country just takes a whole calendar year and then some. So I'm happy that SNL can provide some levity in a stressful time. But yeah, I mean, to go for the, talking about the cast in the show, I mean, we haven't seen a DeSantis on the SNL stage yet. So that's something that will probably have to be addressed for either a short time or a longer time. And so who they choose either outside the cast or inside the cast to portray Florida Governor Ron DeSantis will be interesting in itself, and then see where they take the character. Because just talking about Trump alone, think of everyone who's portrayed him. They all have a different spin on it, some more accurate than others. So interested in that. And then, like you said, John, this whole cast of Republicans that they can make fun of through primary season through March. So that's what I'll be interested in as an analyst of the show and as a fan of the show. Yeah, just maybe don't make it like crazy goofy. Like, I mean, I feel like it's been that way in the past. Save the goofiness for the fun sketches that we see, after the monologue and things like that.
Oh, see, I'm all about the goofiness. Like, life is like it's very serious. Like, obviously there's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. Like, to me, like, SNL is a reprieve from that. And like, I love it when they get goofy. So, and I actually think like we were missing some of that. Like, we were missing some of the goofiness, because part of the conversations we were having over the last few years was that the lines that they were using in political sketches were just the lines that crazy politicians were saying in real life. So like, I'd rather stretch these people out and be like the more extreme versions of who they actually are, because to me, like, that is the great thing about SNL. That's what made political humor work for decades. So I'm looking for levity from the show in a time that I really feel like is needed.
How would you characterize the beginning of 46 with Jim Carrey and Alec and Maya? Like, with, I feel like that was like peak goofiness. It was almost like,
yeah, but
insane,
here's the problem with that is that mm-hmm. Jim, like, you knew what you were getting with Jim Carrey when you brought him in.
Yeah,
right? Like, Jim Carrey is like a brand unto himself, where we were gonna get, no matter what political character Jim Carrey was playing, we were gonna get a version of Jim Carrey. But I don't know, like, when Marcelo is playing DeSantis, which would probably be my prediction, no like inside knowledge, but just like that's who I would probably guess. I don't know what Marcelo is gonna do with the character of DeSantis. Whereas like, I feel like everybody knew that like Jim Carrey was going to play a version of Biden, which was also a version of characters of his that we've seen in movies before. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. It's like, it's just a different thing when we're going in with like puppies who haven't done this before. Whereas like movie stars have been around for decades. It's, what you're going to get. Yeah. Darren, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, again, like, I love Jim Carrey. He's been around my whole childhood, and he's awesome. But yeah, when he came out to play Biden, it did seem like I've kind of seen this before. I kind of seen what he's like. He didn't have like the freshest take on it, unfortunately. Like a lot of people said it was like Fire Marshal Bill all over again. And then like like you said, he got weird with stuff like the whole him turning into a fly and landing on Mike Pence's head. It was like, what is this? It was very bizarre. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting experiment, but unfortunately, I don't think he quite pulled it off.
Yeah, that's fair. I figured like to talk about some other themes and other questions. I'll just throw at you some of, like I'll put some cast members in categories. Tomorrow night during the cast draft, we're going to go over all the cast members individually. And as we draft them, sort of talk about each one of them and why they were drafted. But for tonight, guys, I'll just like throw out some groups of cast members and ask you if you have any thoughts or expectations for them this season. Starting with the most senior cast member, I guess Keenan Thompson, right? Going into his 20th season. This is an anniversary season for him. So exciting that I can't believe 2003 he started the show. We're in 2023 and he continues to dominate the stats, Mike. Like we walked out of 48 in the postseason shows, just talking about screen time, sketch appearances. Like he continues to lead and put up numbers that he never put up early in his career. And, just is that MVP. So for you, like, how do you feel about Keenan going into 49?
So this would be his 21st season right now. So he's broken his record 7 times in a row for most seasons. For Keenan, I'm glad he's still here. I mean, I'm at the kind of point where he probably should have left a little bit of time ago, but it's Keenan. Like when he's on your screen, you're not going to be mad. So I say that all the time. So I would like to see him maybe scale back a little bit and let maybe one of the younger guys take more screen time if it's a male role. We saw that with Heidi for the female roles last year, which I loved. So for Keenan, I like him to be, continue to be the elder statesman, of course. But if he's the MVP of the year again, I think that's probably not a great thing. But like we talked about at the beginning of the show with 50 coming up, I almost expect him to be back for 50 and he's going to get a lot of time. So whether that's good or bad, I'm kind of ambivalent on.
Yeah, Darren, I think he'll be back for sure next year because he has to be. But I think last year he shined due to the transition. Not that he can't pull it off. Like he could definitely run the show when he needs to. But I felt like the transition was happening. They needed him to step into roles because he stabilized a bunch of sketches with new performers they didn't fully trust. I don't know that they need as much out of him now. So how do you feel about him going into season 49?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting statement. Keenan is really kind of made this very unique little lane for him because I mean, again, like you said, somebody who was born when he was first on the show can legally drink now, and that's insane to me. That's never
be in the cast
or be in the cast exactly, and that's insane. That's bizarre, and I feel like if anybody else was on the show this long, people would be saying, why are they still on the show? They need to leave. But it's a thing where not too many people are mad at him for staying that long. People still like him on the show, and he doesn't want to seem to leave the show, and the show doesn't seem to want him to leave. So he's just kind of just there now. He's just this cast member that just be there to the end of time apparently. But yeah, I mean, to your question, as far as him going into the next season, I definitely see him going until 50, maybe until beyond. Even though it seems like he does appear a lot in sketches, it feels like he's not in as many sketches anymore. It kind of does feel like he's taking a few steps back and letting the young folks shine, which is good. I kind of want to see more of that, and just sort of him, just kind of keep on doing what he does, and sort of becoming the elder statesman, like you said, because he's at that point now where he's almost the matriarch. Well, I mean, Lauren is the matriarch, or patriarch. That's the word.
Patriarch.
But yeah, yeah, he is the elder statesman to the show at this point. So I just kind of to see him keep doing that, because I mean, at this point, we've kind of seen everything he can do. He's kind of done it all at this point. So I mean, at this point, it's just all you have to do is like maybe give the younger folks a stage to do what they do and grow, and maybe leave, I guess, if you ever wants to. But that doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon.
Yeah, Mike, I think from like our analysis of the stats last year, like Keenan was just in so much, but maybe he took a step back on the A roles compared to previous seasons. Like, or I would be curious if I don't remember fully if maybe perhaps at the beginning of the season he was more involved in the actual being the A role of a sketch and then stepped away from that. But my view of it is that they definitely don't need him to be the A role as much as they did for a few seasons.
Yeah, I just pulled up the numbers, and we talk about the power ranking stat and how it combines screen time and appearances, so we can kind of get a good assessment. And Keenan was like over 100 every episode last season, except for Brendan Gleeson, the Chappelle episode where everyone scored low, Austin Butler, the Christmas episode, which was Cecily's Goodbye, and then the Kelsey episode. So other than that, he was like leading the cast almost. So Keenan Thompson for sure is like the leader of the SNL cast. So whether that makes people happy or angry, it's up for them to say, but it's like no doubt about it that Keenan Thompson runs the cast.
Will be very, very interesting to see what he does this season. Next up, we'll go chronologically by them joining the cast. So let's ask you about Jost and Che, who are back on Weekend Update for continuing to break records just year after year on Weekend Update. Curious, do we feel like we have strong expectations for them? I think there was points last year where we really expected, okay, they might leave the show. I sort of think now that they're there through the long haul, they're there through 50. So Darren, any expectations for Jost and Che this year?
Yeah, joke swap. We haven't gotten a good joke swap in forever. That's my expectation. I want to get a joke swap this Christmas. That's the big one. But I mean, aside from that, Jost and Che work great together. I love their chemistry. But again, I kind of feel like we've seen everything they can do, really. So I mean, if they leave, if this is their last season, I think it feels right. Because it's been like a decade at this point that they've been doing there. It's weird. Like part of me, I love their banter. I love what they do. But then again, part of me does think it might be time for like a new anchor or new pair of anchors to get in there and shake things up a little bit more. Because like we said, we kind of want like a new slate or a new era of SNL to come in. So I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of who would take the place. Maybe one of the writers. I know some people thought Rosebud Baker would be a good fit, but yeah, like I think at this point with Jost and Che, we've kind of seen everything they can do, and I like what they can do. So as long as they keep kind of doing that, and if this is their last season, so be it. But above all else, joke swap. I want that joke swap, and I want it now.
Yeah, I actually think that if I had to say that the writer's strike or the time off specifically was good for anybody, I think it's a guy like Colin Jost, who is a really brilliant writer. And I felt like at times last season, like you could see on his face, like he just looked a little tired. And he was doing his job and he was very good, but like Cecily leaving was clearly very hard on him. Like you could see it on screen. I think like a lot of his friends leaving the show, it was like, when Seth Meyers had all of his friends leave the show, he stayed on a little bit longer and then left and got late night. And I feel like for Colin, like Colin's been there since like 2005. He's seen like multiple casts leave. He's seen a lot of his friends go. And I think he's probably like had this internal like dialogue of like, do I stay? Like, is this my job for life? Like, what do I want to do in the future? Is there a late night talk show for me? Like, I'm sure he's thinking about all these things. And then he had this long break, and I wonder if this was like a refresher for him, because I would expect that like him and Che, who have developed incredible chemistry and have become some of the greatest Weekend Update performers ever, I think they're going to come out swinging on Saturday. And if they don't, I'll be very surprised. So what do you think, Mike?
I think as a fan, I'm happy that they're back. I think last year it was like, let's have some things that people are used to, because so many of the faces that we're used to seeing are no longer there. So having Weekend Update, which is already so much of a staple of the show that you expect every Saturday, it's always there at the same time, same desk, same set. Like it's good to have that familiarity. For this going forward, I would not be surprised if they did a Christmas departure with a joke swap. Just throwing that out there, because I think SNL has to install a new regime at update before 50. So I think if we see Colin and Michael stay past Christmas, then I think they're almost a lock to come back for 50, because they'll be so consistent at that point. Michael Che is entering his 10th season. He's only the 11th cast member ever to reach 10 seasons on the show. Colin just has already reached 10. He's a season ahead of Che. So, I mean, I'm a huge Michael Che fan, so I love him on update. So I think that they have to make that decision. You know, they want to go all out in this fall and prove why they could be the best update team, or, you know, anyone behind the desk in SNL history, and just kind of have this really strong performance, and then, you know, bid farewell to 8H. Then I think that would be smart of them to do that, because some fans might already think they've overstayed, but I definitely do like them, and I think they've only gotten better. But yeah, I'm very interested. I'm definitely on update watch from the stat desk, because it's just such an interesting, like, it's almost like presidents or of countries, like, you know, these regimes of update anchors. So definitely interesting for them. And like I said, if they don't install a new team before 50, it's going to almost seem unfair to two new faces or one new face behind the desk at 50. And then, because we saw Cecily try it, and we saw, you know, early Colin and Michael, and they just like weren't that great. So it's like, it's a hard job to step into. I think that's why they wanted to keep Seth there so long, because he's such a natural at it. So that's my opinion on update going forward. So we'll see. I think we definitely got to get a joke swap, Darren. That's for sure.
Yeah, I third that. I'm very, very into that. I've been waiting to talk about one for so long. So, I mean, I agree. I do think that I actually don't think they're going anywhere, if I'm going to be guessing, because they feel just such an important role in the writer's room. Also, there's like so many pre-tapes that Colin Jost writes. There's so many sketches that Michael Che writes. Like, I know they're not head writers anymore, but they are really integral to that writing team. Especially, we've had so many new writers pop up in the last couple of years. I just think having them as veterans and leadership roles in the writer's room is so important. So I can't imagine them leaving right now. But yeah, anything is possible. Next up, I want to talk about the veterans of the cast. I'll group these people all together, and I'll just let either of you talk about who you want to talk about from the veterans of the cast. But, you know, coming back this season, we got Mikey Day, who had a very interesting season, a really fun one last year that everyone really got behind. We got to talk to him on the podcast. Heidi Gardner really took a step up from last season. We got to talk to her about some of her roles. It'll be interesting to see what she can do this year. So Mikey, Heidi, there's Ego, Chloe, and Bowen, I would group as probably the veterans of the cast. So of those cast members, Mike, anyone that really stands out to you that you're excited to see this season?
Well, just to go off what you said, I mean, maybe the most exciting and
Mike, your microphone got unplugged. I don't know if that was or disconnected. I'll go to Darren and I'll come back to you. Okay. All right, Darren, heading over to you. So let me just ask you, Darren, what do you think about the veterans? Anyone you really want to talk about?
Sure. I mean, we could talk about, right off the only two I could think of is, from what you mentioned, is I'd say maybe Mikey, because he's been on for a while, and I think I mentioned it earlier. Like, I don't know if he's gonna come back, or like, because I imagine he's probably at that, at that time in his stint on SNL where he's like, well, I've been here for a while. Should I keep going, or should I, bow out? Because, now that we have Michael Longfellow, it seems like Longfellow is kind of being prepped to play a lot of the, straight white guy roles that like Mikey would play. So I do wonder about that. And and then I think, well, if Mikey leaves, then does Streeter leave too? Because like the two of them are.
Well, they're both coming back. Like, yeah. Everybody is coming back this season. All the cast members.
Okay.
So like that is for sure confirmed. I'm just curious, like, do you have any expectations of them on the show? Like, I think Mikey took such a big step forward. Do you envision a step back, or do you think he'll continue that momentum?
Oh, I see. I don't know. I think I could see. Let me think. Yeah. Like, I mean, I think he'll sort of still keep going forward, but part of me thinks maybe this will be the last season for him. It's hard to say right now. And then part of me thinks, well, for Bowen, is this the last season from? Because like I know he's kind of expressed like through social media and stuff, like him kind of maybe being burnt out on the show. So like, do I think, well, is he gonna step back or is he gonna like leave? It's hard to say. Like, with all the other veterans in the cast, like I think they're gonna just kill it like they always do, and like I could see them keep going on and on for the end of this season and the next. But like Mikey and Bowen, I'm thinking I don't know, this might be the last season, but it's hard to say right now.
Okay, Mike, back over to you. So what do you think about the veterans of the cast?
I was going to talk about Mikey. I think that was probably the most exciting arc, especially for this podcast, having him on and talking to him, and the appreciation of Mikey just finally came to a peak. And I think his
when you say the appreciation of Mikey, you mean of you?
Mikey's appreciation of me?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go by Mikey, but I mean the fan base just, when cast members stay on a long time, we get to know them, which also makes it harder to criticize them or harder to praise them because we just know what they're about. So for Mikey Day to, still continue to be who he is and why we love him, but also just stand out and have people get excited about, like, talk about the Waffle House sketch or the traffic sketch with Quinta Brunson, things like that we really talked about a lot last season, and for good reason. So I think Mikey Day, this will be his last season. And I think last year he was probably one of those guys that, even if he wanted to leave, I bet similar to maybe what Keenan does every year, but I'm sure that Lauren was like, hey, I think this would be a great opportunity for you to guide this cast to the next era. And maybe his arc will finish in 49. So moving on to other cast members, I would say I'm always excited to see Ego, huge Ego guy. I think she got really hot in 47, and then 48, she was like, I don't want to say relegated, but was like in like tons of 10-to-1s and didn't really have like a new character or something that really highlighted her or made her the star. So I'm looking for that for Ego, because Heidi, I think, finally earned her spot there with the departure of the three veteran ladies. So, 80, Kate and Cecily. So I'm looking for, of course, pairings with Ego and Heidi that we see, or Ego and Chloe, or Heidi and Chloe, things like that. And with Bowen Yang, I agree with Darren that Bowen could be a case of, not staying on too long for that reason. So Bowen Yang has been in a couple films. He has definitely a following on social media, and people follow what he does and what are interested in what he's doing. So I could definitely see Bowen having a TV show, staying with his podcast, things like that. So I don't know if this will be it for Heidi and Ego, because they need strong women in 50, but I would think that Bowen and Mikey, that they would be good candidates for like a great final season. So I'm excited to see them.
Yeah, I think Ego would stick around longer just because she kind of blew up with that Lisa from Temecula sketch.
Definitely.
It's so weird. It's like a sketch that like kind of everything went wrong, but it kind of really got all these views on YouTube and stuff, and like kind of blew her up a little bit. So I don't know. Part of me thinks Ego will stick around like now that she has more
think
eyes on her.
Ego is definitely sticking around. I'm saying Mikey and Bowen, I wouldn't be surprised if this is it for them. But yeah, I think that's the beauty of SNL, is when things like that happen so organically. They don't need stunt casting. They don't need to be topical. It can just be something so silly that we all love. So that's what Ego brought us with that sketch.
Yeah, and I think like the appreciation that the general public had for Ego last season, which she is fantastic and has done some really good things. Like I think in particular the Jenna Ortega Exorcist sketch, like I think that was one that for me was like really, really great and should be well recognized. But I think like the absolute like infatuation with the character of Lisa from Temecula for me was a fascinating storyline. The appreciation for Mikey Day like probably should have been as equal to that. But what I'll say is like for Lisa from Temecula, like I hope this is like a lesson to SNL that like there is value in returning characters and recurring characters. Like it's just to be careful like what they are. Like I think we laid this out clearly last season that we don't want complete repeats of sketches just to make them recurring. But if people, cling on to a character for whatever reason, whether it's the best character in the world or not, then like that's the time to like put them in a new world and like play with the sketch and stuff like that. And I just feel like I hope that the creative juices like start to flow throughout these last few months to the point where we're coming in now. And like, if this weekend we saw a Chad sketch and Lisa from Temecula popped up and went one-on-one with Chad, like I would think that would be hilarious and that would work. And like, it could be fun. Just, like we always just like to just like play with the format a little bit as opposed to like, another, okay, we're at a restaurant again and this is exactly what's going to happen and toss my salad. Like, it's just, I'd rather just have the worlds come into each other. You know what I'm saying? You guys agree?
Yeah. So you're saying Lisa from Temecula is the new Icarus, flew too close to the sun. So generations from now, they'll say, don't be a Lisa from Temecula.
Yeah, for sure. But anyways, I'm really hyped for Mikey. I'm happy that he's back. Like after last season, I expect him to continue the momentum and put together some really good stuff. Heidi Gardner, still feel like she's really underappreciated, just so talented, and just needs to like the fact that she can play the role of like guiding and stabilizing a sketch, but then also can do these characters. Like I do feel like she is a strong presence. I think like Chloe Fineman's arc on the show this season will be one of the more interesting ones to watch because she was put in a lot of stuff last season. I don't know if they all hit, but she is so popular outside the show. So it's like, will that, start to match up with each other at a certain point? I think that's going to be interesting to watch as well. Bowen probably had the most hype coming into season 48. Everybody expected Bowen to take over the show. Will he do it now with the expectations off his back a little bit? Will he step up a little bit more? I think those are things that I'm excited to watch for the veterans. Then there's a group of people that, came in after them who I think will be interesting to talk about, which is Andrew Dismukes, Punky Johnson. We have James Austin Johnson and Sarah Sherman. So those are the next 2 seasons. And, I think it'll be really interesting to talk about these 4 cast members, Andrew and Punky as a duo, like really in terms of numbers and analytics, like didn't hit as much as we thought they would in 48. JJ and Sarah really did. Like if you had to ask someone in the general public which 2 were in the featured cast and which 2 were in the repertory class, they would naturally say the opposite. But now they're all going to be in the main cast with JJ and Sarah being promoted to that main cast. And I'm curious how we feel about those 4 cast members. So Mike, any thoughts on them?
Definitely the most interesting group that we'll talk about tonight or this season, other than we have one rookie coming in. So, we'll have plenty of time to talk about her. But I love following as an SNL historian and huge fan of the show. I love following like classes, the season 46 class would be, Lauren, Punky, and Andrew, like things like that. So seeing them together, I'm always kind of excited when I see them together in the sketch because I'm like, oh, those are the classmates. But yeah, it's JJ has lapped Dismukes and Sarah Sherman has lapped Punky Johnson, in like every metric that I post. So it's definitely interesting because now that they're all on, I guess you could say, even footing in the cast as far as status, but in tenure, Andrew and Punky, I think, just are so different than James Austin Johnson and Sarah Sherman. It's not even close. So there's not really a lot to compete with, but other than the airtime. So I think it depends on the writer's room synergy and what they're trying to put out as a product every week, because I know that Andrew and Punky are producing good content as much as JJ and Sarah are. But then you have, the fan base who I think you could say all 4 of those names, they have lovers and haters. So I think it's not as much as I don't see. Let's talk about Punky and Sarah. Like, I don't know if I see either of them becoming a Kate, 80, or Cecily, but they could be a new thing, like maybe like Kristen Wiig was. So I could see, especially for Sarah, because her brand is very easy to like differentiate. And then you have Punky Johnson, who I'm so happy is still in the cast, but is like, where is she? So this is it for Punky. Like it's, season 4 for Punky. And like, we don't need an oversaturation of her, but like once in a while when Punky's in there, like people go nuts. Like look at the Big Boy sketch. So things like that I'm looking forward to see. And then JJ, no worry about him playing Trump, playing Biden. And we got to see him team up with Dismukes. So I think we'll see more of that. For Sarah, I think she should be the candidate to have the most fun of this cast because she's kind of proven that what's she going to do? That's the best thing you can have on your side as a cast member, is not knowing exactly what's going to happen. So we talk about Keenan and Mikey. We love them, but like a lot of times we do know where the sketch is going because we either know their tone, their style, or just you see the set, you see the setup. You're like, all right, I know what's going to happen. So with Sarah Sherman, I mean, if you love her or hate her, you're like, I at least want to see what's going to happen. So Sarah Sherman, definitely a candidate for like boom 1 week, bust the next. But I kind of like that in cast members.
Yeah, and I thought it was going to be all boom. Like I thought we were getting that from week to week to week in the fall last year, and there was definitely some bust in there for Sarah, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, before I get into my thoughts on these four, Darren, what do you think of the four cast members I mentioned? Andrew, Punky, JJ, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both you guys. Like, when Sarah kind of came on the scene, she's like really just kind of exploded and like really shook things up and like, doing kind of weird stuff that was really kind of giving us a fresh new feel for SNL. And so, like, I mean, I just thought that like SNL would just put her in more and more things and kind of make her, the new Kate or the new darling of the show. And like that hasn't really happened. Like, but maybe that's a good thing because, too much of a good thing can just kind of ruin something. But like she has had moments where she's like really kind of exploded and really gotten weird with stuff. But then like, like Mike said, like the next week she won't have much to do. Or so I mean, I think that's the right path for her, I'd say. I mean, I know she's in good with the PDD boys, so like she'll still get like a lot of good stuff to do, a lot of good material, and yeah, and so I think she's on the right track. JAJ and the Smukes, they seem to be kind of buddy now. They seem to be like kind of the new duo a little bit. I mean, the King's Brothers Toyota sketch is phenomenal. I really enjoyed that sketch quite a bit. So I'm hoping to see more of that. I mean, JAJ, I'm not worried about at all because with like the election year coming up, he's Trump and Biden. Like he'll get his screen time for sure. I would love to see more Dismukes. Hopefully, maybe now that Dismukes and JAJ are kind of partnered up, we'll see more of that because I do like Dismukes' type of kind of dark humor of like the Beanie Baby sketch with on the Lizzo episode or that prom pre-tape on the Natasha Lyonne episode. Like he has a very kind of, or the one what was it, the Gerard Carmichael episode where it opens with him and Gerard Carmichael throwing a dead body off a cliff in front of a grieving family. Like he has this really weird, dark, like almost like Michael O'Donoghue type of humor that I really like to see more of in SNL. And as far as Punky goes, I mean, I don't know. I would love to see more of Punky and what she can really do. Like she pops up here and there. I really enjoyed that sketch she did on the Jake Gyllenhaal episode, which the psychiatrist. I really thought that was a good one, but like it didn't seem to hit with everybody like it hit with me. But I really would like to see more of what she can do. It feels like she's kind of falling into that Melissa Villaseñor trap, and I really don't want that for her. I really want her to avoid that. So hopefully this season we'll get to see more of her and what she can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for Punky, she needs to, play to her strengths, which are that she's a really good rapper and like artist and lyricist. Like you saw that with Big Boys that she wrote with SZA last year, which was so fantastic. Pete's on the show. Pete loves doing raps. Like if we got a Punky and Pete rap this weekend, I would be thrilled about that. Like that's the type of thing that I think really works for her. And I think a huge win for Punky last year was her being on the Weekend Update desk with Mikey Day as herself, where Mikey's, joking about how Punky doesn't remember any celebrity's name. Like that was what we love from Punky Johnson and want to see on the show from her. So for me, I just think that I see glimpses of somebody who can just really, really crush it at SNL, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't fully clicked yet. And I think that part of the solution will be to have her just work with a consistent other cast member on the show, whether that is Ego, like she's done with Lisa from Temecula, whether that's Mikey and they find it going, or maybe one of the new cast members. But I think she just needs to find her crew, and it's still a work in progress. And I think she's going to get there hopefully this season. And I'm thrilled that she's back to get that opportunity. But somebody who has found his crew is Andrew Dismukes, who really, with him and JJ, they are such a strong duo. I think we're going to be talking all year long about them as a duo. Like we saw the glimpses of it in season 48, 49, I think will be their year. They remind me a little bit of Forte and Sudeikis. I know that, JJ and Sudeikis isn't a 1-for-1, but I do see a lot of Forte in Andrew. And I do think like that last year of Will Forte, where they were doing a lot of stuff together, I think is the potential of what Andrew and JJ could be. Whereas we're getting some really fun things on the show between the two of them, and like that to me will lead to JJ domination. Like if he's taken over the cold opens, doing the politics stuff, and then also doing really great sketches with Andrew, I think we're going to be talking about this guy as like really rising up the ranks of the greats. Sarah Sherman, I think she has all the ability in the world to take over the show. The question is, will SNL let her? Because every single week it seems that she is either getting a sketch on air that everybody loves or it's getting cut. So the material's there. Will it get on stage? Like, will now in her third year on the show, she have the leverage to produce something week after week? I think that's where I'm at thinking about those cast members. So we also had 4 rookies last season in Molly and Devin and Longfellow and Marcelo, who are now coming back for year number 2. Mike, any thoughts about these 4 sophomores in season 49?
I think they all had a good rookie year, and SNL allowed them to, going from a cast of 21 to 17, 4 of them being rookies and 2 of them being, Jost and Shay. So they had a little bit more room. I think Longfellow started hot because he had some update pieces, like, right away he had 2 and Marcelo had 1 and he had 1 later. Longfellow had 1 later too. Devin had an early 1, but we didn't see him again. So Devin is definitely the question mark of that crew. All stand-ups. They're all, people who have their own voice, which SNL always loves to promote that, especially at the desk. I think Marcelo Hernandez is the next star of Saturday Night Live. I think he is going to just be different and young and fun, and they're going to really prop him up. So I expect him to rise probably to the top of those 4. Michael Longfellow, I think, has one of the best hit rates of them for sure, because when he was on, people liked it and he got good opportunities. But other than that, he was like, which I think is hilarious. I'm a fan of him, but that he would get these like 5-second roles all the time, but they were always got 1 laugh and he was gone. It was when he was the guy against the wall in the Quinta drug dealer sketch, unreal, selling black tar heroin. So things like that are just so perfect for him. I know we did a lot of speculation on like, is he kind of the next Kevin Nealon or Norm kind of person to be waiting in the wings to take over for Jost? So I'm be interested to see his name on some writing credits. So if he produces some sketches that maybe he's the star in or not in. So I'm looking forward to that. And then Molly, they got their big break on the last episode. And like I mentioned, they were also did really well in the Molly Shannon episode and the Aubrey episode. They were in the like Catholic school sketch. So all year I was like, is Molly Carney going to be Aristotle or are they going to blow up? And then couldn't have blown up at a better time. So Devin Walker, question mark. Loved him in the HIV commercial that he did. He was like unreal in that, I thought. So definitely his best moment of the year for me.
Yeah, and as Chris mentions in the chat, I was going to bring this up. Marcelo was on Late Night with Seth Meyers last night and just did such a good job. He was so funny on there, brought his mom on, and she was sitting in the audience and talking about how much his mom inspired him. So definitely go check out that interview if you get a chance. Darren, we'd love your thoughts on the second-year players coming into season 49.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Mike. I mean, it's Marcelo and Longfellow. I mean, just I've never seen like these like 2 new cast members who are new to the scene just be so like confident and just calm and just at ease and just lovable and likable and just loose. Like, I don't know, there's something like, especially Marcelo, he just comes out like, hey man, what's going on? Like he's not nervous at all. Like he's not like the very first time he was on the show, he was just like whatever and just like loose and comfortable and just confident. The confidence on these 2, like I've never been that confident in my life. And like these 2 guys just come in just all swagger and but also just really likable and really cool. And yeah, it's definitely like Marcelo and Longfellow. Like they're definitely like they're gonna be like the two new leads or whatever of the show. As far as Molly go, I would love to see more of them. I mean, I'm glad they got a chance to sort of really, you know, explode towards the end of the season, but I really thought they should have been like kind of had their little weekend update segment earlier on in the season, because from what I remember, like, you know, in the beginning of last season, they introduced Longfellow and Marcelo and Devin, and then we didn't get to Molly till like later on, and I really felt like I don't know, like a part of me
The
felt
last
like
episode of the season, Darren.
yeah, exactly. Like I think at that by the time Molly got on, like Longfellow and Marcelo and Devin had been on like twice or like multiple times, and I was still waiting for Molly to, you know, introduce themselves, and I was like, this should have happened early. I feel like, but you know, I would love to see more of them. And yeah, Devin, I do like Devin, but yeah, I still don't feel like I have a good handle on kind of what Devin is all about, and I like to see him sort of grow more as a performer and to see more what he can do. Because yeah, I just see more Devin.
For sure. I totally agree with what the guys are saying here. Like, for me, Marcelo is the full package. He dominates, like, he has the ability to dominate in live sketches. He can do weekend update. He's clearly really great in short films. Like, you saw that in the Waffle House one where he was there opposite of Jenna Ortega. Like, he has all the makings of the next star of the show. So I think that he is like a lock to be really great. I still think Michael Longfellow's figuring it out. Like, he's really, really good at a certain section of the show, which has succeeded for performers in the past. But I am looking forward to seeing if Longfellow can transition over to live sketches. Mike talked about how he would do 5 seconds at a time, but is that because like there wasn't roles that made sense for him for longer? Like, how is he going to get there to the point where we see him on a regular basis in live sketches throughout the show? Devin, I have high hopes for. Devin's a really confident, funny guy as well. Like, I think he has all the makings. I just think there was, you know, them still trying to figure it out, like the natural rookie move of figuring it out. And he was the biggest question mark for me out of those 4 coming out of the season. But I do think that I just think there was a lot of talent brought in last year, and I'm excited to see how it continues to go. And then for me, like, I was, like I mentioned on the podcast, I was backstage for the Anna de Armas episode, the last SNL episode, and just seeing the writers and the cast react to Molly Carney's piece on a Weekend Update, they were going nuts for them. Like, it was just the biggest roar in the studio, the biggest roar backstage. When I walked there, everyone was saying to me like, oh, wait till you see what Molly's doing tonight. And for me, after chatting with Molly a bit, I think a weight has been lifted off of them. Like, I think Molly was waiting for that moment to sort of talk about, you know, being non-binary and like, you know, their feelings and stuff like that, and having that moment that the other 3 guys got at the beginning of the season. And now that Molly had that, I think it's like, let's turn the page and focus on how to best make Molly Carney work at Saturday Night Live, because they're so talented, just like absolutely hilarious. I saw them interact in person with so many people. Just like, Molly is so funny. And I can't wait to see what Molly's going to do this season, because I think that Molly has all the ability to really crush it on the show as well. Like, what an incredible class of rookies. I think we're going to be talking in a few years just about how that group of people that came into the show was one of the better rookie classes in the history of the show. So let's see how it goes. Big question marks, but a lot of fun. Okay. Last but not least, we got one new cast member coming on, and I'd like to talk about Chloe Troast and Please Don't Destroy. And I'm putting them hands in hand with each other, because if it wasn't for PDD, I'm not saying that Chloe wouldn't be a cast member on SNL. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But like, let's be real. I think PDD had a large hand in getting Chloe Troast as a cast member on the show, who went to NYU with PDD. Mike Murray and I were in the audience at Just for Laughs watching Chloe Troast lead a discussion with Please Don't Destroy, asking PDD about their lives, about talking about their NYU stories. So Mike, when we were sitting there in Montreal back in July watching Chloe with the PDD guys, it was so funny because we're like, who is this person? And like, why are they leading this discussion? And just once we saw them on screen, Mike, I was like, oh, I get it. Like, they're really good friends. Like, this was good. So like, now that I think like you and I are like two of the only people qualified to talk about the chemistry between them. What do you think, Mike?
I mean, I think it's clear now that Chloe was trying to just get in the good graces of the SNN gentlemen, John Schneider and Mike Murray. I mean, that became apparent. I mean, literally when I saw, that she was joining the cast, I was like, wow, I did not know that PDD had that pull. Like those guys are gonna run the show someday. They just finished their second season as writers, not even, real full-fledged cast members. And, I mean, hey, if I was on SNL, I'd want to get my buddy on too. I mean, it's fun. John and I, we like to get our friends on this podcast. Like, that's how the world works. You meet people, make relationships, respect their talents, and then you want to show their talents. So nothing wrong with that. So no shade on Chloe Troast at all, because I'm excited to see what she'll bring. It's definitely I like when they bring one person in, because it's like when they come on, that's the rookie. So I think like Casey Wilson, when she came on by herself, right? So it doesn't happen too often, but yeah, I mean, me and John got the the closer look at the future cast.
Yeah, I'm gonna push back a little bit, which is
Please.
that yes, relationships matter, and that is why Chloe Troast is most likely an SNL cast member. But we're not watching PDD hang out with Chloe Troast and play charades at a party. Like, we're watching Saturday Night Live, and she has to produce. Like, she is a rookie on the show. We have to judge her any way that we would judge any other rookie cast member, even though we know that there are relationships there. Like, I think we can come in with the expectation that Chloe Troast is, unless she's awful, she's not going to be fired because she has the relationships at the show. But we have to still like be fair analysts and look at Chloe Troast and judge her as we would any other rookie that joined the show, Mike.
Oh, of course. I mean, at no point did I say that, that's like how SNL works. It just, that's how the world works. I mean, people get opportunities through that. So yeah, it's definitely, hey, would you trade Darren? I mean, you jump into like, would you trade to have an amazing opportunity just for a lot of pressure on you? I mean, who wouldn't say no, Who wouldn't say yes, I should say.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Sure.
Yeah. So coming in, maybe we can get a Troast and Jost, pairing, just to kind of elephant in the room, like just kind of when they do those kind of sketches where they just kind of highlight that someone's new and make fun of their name or something, because no one's going to know who she is. I mean, I don't know if people out there listening are familiar with Pepper Slit, her character, but other than that, there's not a lot of game film on her, I should say.
Yeah, I will say, Darren, before you jump in, that like some people in the chat are talking about like, will PDD ever be cast members? I think the ship has sailed on that. Like I said, I think like pre-47, there was a little bit of like flex contract stuff. Like, will they be cast members? Like, will they not be? I think we're going to settle on like, they're going to do their film pieces. They're going to be writers. I think if this hire is any indication, it's that the future head writers of the show will be Please Don't Destroy if they want it. I think that's what this shows to me more than anything else. So, Darren, what do you think? PDD, Chloe Troast, thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Chloe can do. I looked into her a little bit. I see she's done like a lot of stand-up, and she's done a lot of sort of, I guess, like sketch comedy, and has like a lot of characters. And so she'll be bringing like a lot of that to the show, which is fantastic. And the fact that she is so buddy with the PDD boys, I think really works in her favor. I think that's like a huge leg up for her, because I've always thought that like when you're a new cast member coming to SNL, from what I've seen, like the first thing you really need to do is to partner up with somebody who can write for you and like really highlight your strengths and really showcase them. That's like That's like probably the one important thing a lot of people have done. Unless you can write for yourself, you really need to partner up with a writer who gets you and can really kind of like showcase what you can do. Like I know, Adam McKay had Will Ferrell and Sandler had Perley and now JAJ and Dismuke. So like the fact that she's coming in with her the PDD guys was like a real big boost for her. So they know her. They've done like sketches with her and videos with her, and I believe she's in their upcoming Peacock movie, the PDD movie. So like I really expected to see like kind of big things coming from her because she already has these people who can write for her that know her very well. So I'm really looking forward to it. And as somebody who lives in New Jersey, she's from New Jersey, so that's it's another plus for the Garden State. I think Mr. Stats, you'd probably know that. I believe she's like the 5th SNL cast member from New Jersey to be on the show. So this is a big plus for the Garden State. Very happy.
Until Darren Patterson joins the cast.
Until they get my tape. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we all know that Joe Piscopo is just waiting to welcome her into the building. Another Garden State guy.
It was funny anecdote, John, when we were hanging out with PDD after that, and I remember Chloe Troast's dad was there, and she must have been back in like the green room, and he was trying to walk in, and they like stopped him, and he was like, "I'm the moderator's father." And then when I saw she got cast, that was like the first thing I thought of. I'm like, that's the last time he's going to refer to his daughter as the moderator. It's going to be, I'm Chloe Troast's dad,
Yes, for sure. That's very funny. Yeah. So I'm excited what we're gonna get from Chloe. It should be a lot of fun. All right, guys. Well, I just want to do some like quick rapid fire predictions, if you don't mind. Like I'll just throw some things at you. Just give me a name, like a really quick reason why. I'll ask you like 4 or 5 of these, and then we'll wrap up the show tonight. So, Mike, you are the screen time guy. So I want to know at the end of the season, who's gonna have the most screen time? Who's your prediction?
Keenan Thompson.
Okay, why?
Because he's Keenan Thompson. No, it'll just,
okay.
I mean, that was a softball, John.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Darren, you got a different choice? You think it's gonna be Keenan?
Who is going to get the most screen time?
Yeah, overall.
James Austin Johnson, Trump, Biden, election year.
Ooh.
So
all
yeah.
right. Yeah, that's
right
that's interesting. Give me Heidi Gardner. I'll throw that out there. I think Heidi has the potential to do that this season. Maybe Keenan takes a step back. I think Heidi was in the like top 2 or 3 last year, so she could step up. All right, who will appear in the most live sketches this season? So who will appear in the most live sketches? Darren, do you have a pick?
The most live sketches. I'll go with Ego. She's kind of proven to herself to be like a utility player. She can like shine in things or just be like kind of the second person in the background or something like that. Like, and she she's very good at sort of kind of holding things together as far as sketches go. She's proven herself, so I'll go with Ego.
Okay, Mike, what do you think? Live sketches.
From Columbus, Ohio, born May 10th, 1978. Keenan Thompson.
This is gonna be your answer for everybody.
You're asking the stat guy.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Yeah, I think I'll second that. I think Keenan maybe as well. I'll say for live sketches. I think that Ego is another great choice. So these 2 very strong choices here. If I had to pick anybody else, I would actually say Chloe Fineman. Maybe not like all the roles that we would like necessarily say like that were impact roles, but I do think like she's going to be in a lot of stuff this season. So I think that's another interesting pick. Mike, let me ask you about pre-tapes. Who's going to dominate the pre-tapes this season?
That's a good question. I would go Chloe Fineman. Okay. I have to differentiate the Chloes now.
Yeah, that's gonna. Yeah. So, do we want to make a call here, like on the podcast, or do we want to let it develop naturally? Like, are we gonna go with like Chloe Fineman is Chloe and Troast is Troast because she came second?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, putting Darren, like you have another podcast in the community. Like, we're gonna put the stamp on this. Troast is Troast. Chloe is Chloe. Is that what we're doing?
I think so. Maybe on our podcast we'll call her a Tea Roast. That's a cool little nickname. Okay. I'm trying to get off the ground. See if that happens.
I don't know if I can get away with that, so I'll leave that to you. But,
all right.
Okay. Darren, pre-tapes. What do you think?
Pre-tapes. I mean, I guess if I say the PDD boys, that's kind of cheating. But I would. So as far as cast member, I'll say, maybe I'd say Sarah. Yeah, I'll say Sarah.
Okay, I'll go Mikey. Why not? I think Mikey did some really good pre-tapes last season. I could see him really crushing it this year in the pre-tapes. Who's going to dominate on a weekend update besides Troast and Shea, obviously? So, like, who's going to come in at the update desk and be a really big fixture this season? Darren, do you have a pick for that?
I'd love it to be Marcelo. It seems like now that he's kind of on the rise, and he just had his Seth Meyers. He was on that wearing a spiffy white tux. I think I'd say Marcelo. I'll say that.
Mike?
Appearances wise, I would probably say like tie between Sarah and Longfellow. Maybe like 4 each. I could see happening.
Great call. Yeah, I just love what they keep doing with Sarah, where they have her have that thing like Leslie Jones had this thing with Colin Jost that was like really fun and great dynamic, but it was pretty much like always versions of the same thing. I think like we're getting more derivatives of Sarah messing with Colin, and it always hits for me. So I think Sarah Sherman's going to just continue to crush on Weekend Update. That's a great pick. Let's do 10 to 1s. So last sketch of the night, that's for all the new SNL fans. That's what we call the 10 to 1s. Mike, what do you think? Who's going to crush the 10 to 1s this season?
Maybe the hardest to predict, because even when we had people that were very known for 10 to 1s, you look at the stats, like it's pretty across the board. So it could be anybody. Just for a pick, I'll say JAJ will be in a lot of 10 to 1s this year, because you gotta get the Trump makeup off. He needs a lot of time.
Yeah, I didn't ask about cold opens because I knew we were all going to say JAJ. So you're basically predicting that he's going to bookend the show, which would be really, really dominant. Darren, do you agree, or do you have another pick for 10 to 1s?
I mean, last season I was thinking it would be this. I guess it was like Dismukes last season, who had the most 10 to 1 appearances. So maybe I should say that, but part of me feels like, I don't know, it feels like Bowen is getting weirder and weirder with his sketches, and like a lot of them seem to be going in the 10 to 1 zone. So I'll say Bowen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll just throw out, I think this is where we see a lot of Chloe Troast this season. I think that maybe Troast, out of being a rookie, will not like dominate the 10 to 1s, but I think that she'll have a large case for having a big role here. I think a couple years ago we were like, this is Sarah Sherman's. Last year we were like, this is Andrew Dismukes, and I don't know that we got the traditional 10 to 1 segment. I think if that's the theme I'm looking for this season, maybe like bring back a more traditional, just very weird and wacky 10 to 1s, and we may get like a combination of Sarah, JJ, and Andrew, and some Troast stuff there. I think that could be kind of fun. So that will do it on that. My last question, this is kind of fun. So we have Pete Davidson coming in for the premiere. Who is the next alumni that's going to host this season, even if they've done it before? So we had to pick one former cast member to come back and host this season after Pete Davidson. Mike, do you have a pick on that?
Ooh, wish I prepared this one. There's probably a lot of good picks. First time or just anybody?
Anybody. Who do you think would be after?
Chris Rock.
Okay. All right. Chris Rock coming back again. Darren, you have a pick?
I mean, I'd love it if Sudeikis came back, just because he really rocked it the first time. So I would say that. And is it too soon to say Kate, or does that need more time, you think?
I don't think it's too soon, but I think that maybe we're looking at a finale, like towards the end of 49. I wouldn't mind seeing Kate back. I think this question is really fascinating because I think season 50, we're going to have a lot of alumni hosting. So it's like, when do you want to use up your alumni card on people? I'm going to just like wish this into existence, but especially with the SAG strike and like not knowing what types of hosts we're going to get. Give me Bobby Moynihan to like finally, like we got teased with it last year with the drunk uncle. I think if we get another, like a Bobby hosted episode, it'll be very like not similar in quality to what we got with Forte, but similar in excitement to what we got when it was announced that Forte was going to host. It was like, yes, finally, like coming back to the show, we get a full episode of Bobby. I think that would be super exciting. I know that there was MacGruber for Forte, but perhaps there will be something that they can get Bobby back in the building for that.
Yeah, that's great. Like, part of me also would like, I mean, he's not a cast member, but he was a writer. I still love to see Odenkirk on this show, but maybe that's just
me. Yeah, for sure. I have to feel like he was asked at some point, but I guess we shall see. He did also appear on Late Night after before Marcella last night, so kind of fun connection there. All right, guys. I mean, this was so much fun to go through season 49. Like, I feel like I got like the juices flowing. Like, I'm ready to go. Like, it's exciting. Like, only a few more days, and we're gonna get there. So, before we do, we got one more show for you. If you have time to listen to everything this week, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back with 7 other panelists as the 8 of us go to battle to draft cast members to pick our cast teams for the season. This was a really fun draft we did in 48. I'm so excited to talk about this again in 49, and we'll continue to update the results as we get the stats week by week. So make sure to join us tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern for that. And then Saturday night after the episode, Pete Davidson and Ice Spice will be back for the Hot Take Show. If you've ever like listened to the podcast and you're like, oh wow, like the Hot Take Show sounds like fun, give it a chance. Like maybe you're not such a late night person. Maybe you could stay up for a little bit, but just jump into the live chat, because getting to talk through the sketches with everyone is a really great bonding moment for any SNL fan who maybe like didn't watch the show with their friends and wants to know what other people thought of the sketches. Like, it's not even just my opinion on the show. Like, you get to hear everybody's opinion on the sketches. And I think that's what's so much fun about these Hot Take shows. So try and join us on Saturday night for that. And of course, Roundtable, Mike will be back at By the Numbers next week. And then we got another countdown episode coming up next Thursday. So Mike, thanks for joining us. So happy to get to hear your coverage all season long. Anything that you would like to plug?
I mean, I'll plug this podcast, Saturday Night Network. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this show every week on following a live show, Wednesdays at 8 Eastern, I host a show called SNL By the Numbers. It is the sports talk radio of SNL. Nothing else like it in the galaxy. So I'm always doing new stats, love inspiration for things I haven't done yet. And yeah, it's literally everything you could want to know. You know, someone last year asked me for a dog count. They asked me for a nipple count. Whatever you need, I can provide the numbers for you. And yeah, it's just a ton of fun. It's you know, a little less rigid. So it's like anything kind of goes, and it's a quick show. So please check it out. It's a ton of fun. I love producing it for you guys.
Yeah, it's very different than all the other rigid shows we produce on the network.
Rigid.
Yeah. Darren, your show is absolutely fantastic as well. So please tell the listeners where they could check that out. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, no, thanks for having me, John. Yeah, so I do a little podcast with my buddy John Trumbull here in the beautiful state of New Jersey called SNL Nerds. We break down all the latest episodes of SNL, but of course, you know, when SNL goes dark, like it has for the past few months, we'll do like something else SNL related, a movie, a TV show. For the Halloween season in October, we just put out an episode about the Mike Myers movie, So I Married an Ex-Murderer, and the Eddie Murphy film, Vampire in Brooklyn. So give those a listen. We actually also did some interviews with some authors who've come out with some amazing books about SNL and sketch comedy. Give those a listen wherever you find podcasts, streaming on all the platforms. And you can also, let me put my earbud back in, and you can also follow the podcast on Twitter at SNL Nerds Show, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Blue Sky, and wherever else at Darren Credible. That's DARIN Credible.
Awesome. Thanks again, Darren. You can follow our podcast at the SNL Network, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We got a lot of Pete Davidson graphs that are going up all week long. So every single week as we go into a show, we got our amazing team of marketing experts that put together these charts to get people excited for the week with very interesting stats about the show. So we have a ton of Pete Davidson content coming out now and through the episode on Saturday. And then you can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and turn that notification bell on to get notified every time we're live for a new show. All right. On behalf of Mike and Darren, my name is John Schneider from the SNN. We will see you next time, everybody. Enjoy season 49.